Hello and welcome to Podsongs, where we interview inspirational people in service to others as inspiration for a new song. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Jay Malinowski, best known as the lead vocalist and guitarist of Bedouin Soundclash, the Canadian band who rose to fame in the noughties with their reggae ska and rock-fused sound, with hits like When the Night Feels My Song and Brutal Hearts. Jay has also pursued a solo career creating socially conscious songs that explore themes of love, justice, and personal empowerment. Today, he's going to interview the renowned Irish philosopher Richard Kearney, whose influential works include The Wake of Imagination, Strangers, Gods, and Monsters, and Anatheism, whose career has focused on the intersection of philosophy, theology, and literature. Together, they'll explore deep topics related to identity, culture, and the human experience. Stick around for an insightful and thought-provoking discussion, and smash that subscribe button, share your thoughts in the comment box, and sign up for our newsletter at podsongs.com. Hello, Jay. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
How was that introduction?
That was phenomenal. Good job.
I couldn't say Anatheism.
Yeah.
We could just do the show on how to say that word, yeah.
Just a whole hour. Actually, it'd be great. Yeah, I could. I didn't even realize that there were so many ways to say it too now. So I'm a little nervous. Maybe I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah. Well, this is a heavyweight episode. Rather you than me.
I did. I have been reading Richard Kearney for a while, and when this came up, it was my first thought, like how amazing it would be to speak with him, and then kind of put it in the back of my mind, working on a few other things, and then you got back in touch, and we're like, yeah, so Richard's agreed to do it, and at that point, I looked back at my copy here of Anatheism, and started reading a bit more, and I was like, "Oh my god!" I felt like I was right back in university, where I'm like, I'm about all the terms. Like, yes, that does mean this in common English, but when you start applying that word to philosophical or phenomenology or whatever, I was like, "Oh my gosh, have I gotten myself into a world of problems?" But my out is that I am a lowly musician. I'm here humbly. So,
But because this becomes a shock to fans of Bedouin Soundclash, because I know you're known as not just a singer and guitarist, you're also an artist and you're a painter in your own right. So, but this
yeah.
is is this a personal area of interest in religion, theosophy? Is this?
Yeah, I mean, how can I'm trying to figure out how to parse them apart. They all, I mean, for lack of a better word, intersect for me. My life, my writing, music, art, personal life, all inform each other.
Yeah, of course.
The album, and I'm sure every artist is the same. Um, and so, yeah, when it comes to spirit, like living spiritually, that is a huge key component to my life, especially at this point now. And that's how I got introduced to Richard Kearney's work as well.
Because 20 years of lyrics.
Yeah.
Yeah, this really for fans. This really informs, gives us a chance to look back and say,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think, especially when it comes to a band like Bedouin Soundclash. We started the band when we were 18 years old, and we were very lucky. The first thing we did became successful. Now, I know a lot of people who maybe their third or fourth try, they get something that works. And because we were so young, we just took that for granted. We're like, well, I guess this is just what happens. But as a result of that, I love what the band is, and it was a vision that I had when we were 18. And but as you get older, there's so many different facets to life, and I think that's why I do so many solo projects or write books. And when people hear those, sometimes they go, I can't really reconcile Bedouin Soundclash with this very dark symphonic solo record you made about identity and sailors and whatever. So I think that that if you only knew us from Bedouin, it might be the interest in philosophy and religion might not make sense, but
Well, I mean, the
it
Bedouin.
all does inform.
Yeah, I mean, you're like, the specials or
Yeah,
Suggs. You're that name is tied to ska reggae. But
yeah.
I don't. Can you not evolve that? We probably don't want to evolve that project into something different because you've got such a great thing there. It's like,
Yeah, as soon as I think, actually, as this is one thing why we love the UK, because playing in the and it's what was the for Canada, but really it was England that accepted us first on a larger scale. Um, and it was incredible for us because all the music that we loved growing up came from England. And it came from that mixture of like the Windrush immigration of people from the West Indies coming to London and England and mixing with bands like, bands like the Specials or the Clash in a real way, in a way that
yeah,
was like living in the same place. It wasn't Eric Clapton going to Jamaica as a superstar and doing I Shot the Sheriff. It was Joe Strummer,
young
uh,
kids. Yeah, they were
with
like,
young kids
yeah,
together. And that tradition continued so that when I would hear, um, the Streets or like Ronnie Size or Asian Dub Foundation or, all like moving into the '90s
mm,
and continuing to like we love how broad it is and that the music is accepted, especially in England, is just sort of soul music from Jamaica. Whereas you're all right. If you go to, um, and we felt we could be part of it because in Canada, in Toronto, there's a massive that we the same immigration. So we were so many of us have been exposed to that music as well. But yeah, you're right. In North America, if you do say ska or reggae, it really does get you pinned into a certain situation that doesn't allow for that sort
yeah. A
of
space album would be.
yeah, yeah. Like I love, there's like the third wave ska thing, or else it's like Sublime, and fantastic bands, but definitely has a placeholder, and it doesn't move as much as it
Mm.
does with as much depth, I think, as in England. So,
But I was listening to because you collaborated with the Interceptors, and I hadn't heard them before.
oh, the
And
Interrupters, yeah, the
sorry, the
Interrupters, yeah.
Interrupters, yeah. And they covered the Bad Guy. Um,
Yep,
yeah. So and it was great with saxophone, and so yeah, it's
the
just
Billie
such like
Eilish, the Billie Eilish,
yeah,
yeah,
like and I
ab
thought I thought it was the original for a minute. I thought because it sounded so good.
yeah.
I thought she must have copied that song, so I had to research it just to correct myself. But
They're phenomenal. No, no, you know what? Thank you for reminding me that like LA's The Interrupters is one of my favorite bands, and they, I think, really synthesize a lot of great things
yeah,
in so we love
you've become
them.
you're the music establishment now. You-
Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
No, but I wish I was Canadian because you get so much support from the Arts Foundation, don't you? Is that true? Or
Yeah, it is true. Yes, there's no doubt about that. I mean that it's Canada has I mean, where we live next to a country that has so much dominance culturally everywhere
mm,
in
yeah,
the world. That was
you need to kick back.
yeah, some sort of limitation on that. Um, so yeah, there and as a result, there's like I do tell my friends, I mean, in American bands, like there are things that would survive that I have friends who played in bands in their 20s and aren't able to do it anymore if they were living in New York or LA.
Yeah,
And yet, as a Canadian, you can, within reason, you can continue your career if you have some sort of um, support within the public. So
yeah, that's great because I live here in the south of Italy, and we get a lot of
yeah,
Canadian bands through because they get a lot of tour support, and yeah, I think
right,
it makes sense to invest in your cultural exports. Makes
yeah, yeah, and so punching above its weight, I feel like Canada does maybe through proximity to the U.S. because we are so close, so there is that machine right beside us. But also, I mean, when you think of the tradition of like so many Canadian, whether it's folk artists or that it now seems like pop artists, there is a I do think Canada punches above its weight for visibility. So
Do you live in LA now, or are you still based in Canada?
no, I live in Victoria, right on the
Okay.
so the furthest west you can get. Um, and I spend a lot of time in LA. I
Ah,
love
okay.
LA.
Yeah, because I've
I
saw
by the way, I
photoshoots
love
there and
yeah. I have a lot of friends down there, and I spend but, we have a 4-year-old son, Finn, now, and Victoria is sort of I mean, the name suggests it alone. It has this sort of, old,
yeah, look
Victor
at that house. Look at that. You don't get what you that's not an LA house, is it? You don't get
No, it's not. You sometimes feel like you're because Victoria was like it was one of the, colonial outposts like that and then sort of once the railway came in, because 'cause we're on an island,
mm,
it stopped being of importance. But it has all the pretensions of,
yeah.
like, when you go downtown, it looks like Little England, and there
Wow.
are a lot of English people here. So it has this sort of, like always say it has, like, what North Americans think England will look like if they go there without realizing maybe the grimness of, like, Sheffield or something like that, like,
Yeah, yeah, the
it has more of
reality.
that leaf,
Yeah.
which I
They
love. So
maybe they film a lot of English series there and, pretend it's
yeah, what was it? I don't know if you ever watched Arrested Development, and there was, like, Little Britain. They had the Little Britain section.
Oh, yeah?
I'm going
No, I
deep
didn't
on
see that. No,
we're
no.
just talking about Arrested Development, so,
Okay.
uh, anyways, whatever. That's Vic it's
Yeah, no,
beautiful.
you did right choice because 'cause you're far enough. You can go in for the
Yeah,
day, but you
yeah,
get to come out to sanity.
yeah, exactly. So,
Alright then, back to Richard then. So, have you based any songs on philosophers before?
I'm like I have well, okay, let's I did. I mean, not off the actual philosophers, let's say that, but Natural Right, which was a off of our first record, Root Fire. So that was when I was 18. Natural Right is a very on the nose questioning of like maybe this is more of an ethics issue, but it would be a philosophy issue too of like what is the difference between uh, are there natural rights? Do we have natural right?
Right.
So, and I think this would be a humanism thing, which maybe I know that we could talk about with Richard, but or are they fabricated rights? Like there is no such thing as a natural right
Okay.
to humanity. So this was I mean, this is very much a first year. Um,
Well, you majored in, fine arts. Let's
I,
cut you some slack, yeah. I mean, you were smoking doobies in the back,
Obviously,
you were weren't
I yeah, was it my favorite? I mean, Joe Strummer was my hero. It still is my hero. It's and I think he said that art school is the place where people, the last place people go to not have to do any work and
yes.
form bands.
Yeah.
So like that's really what I was doing, and I was pretending that I also was moonlighting in important issues about humanity.
Well, this is your chance to correct it. Are you gonna go for a second master's? You could, you know, you could go for
Yeah,
another the other degree.
yeah, it sounds like I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
after the conversation.
Okay, but do you have questions, or it's just a free flowing conversation, or
Oh, I had many
you have
questions.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, I have many
You
questions.
asked ChatGPT, or did you?
I don't use ChatGPT, and I have friends who do, and I'm astonished at how obviously how quickly they get things
Yeah.
done,
Yeah.
and then how clear it makes everything.
Mm.
But I still go old school and think, you know what, I might get to something that only I would come to.
Yeah, that's definitely true, yeah, yeah, and also because, I saw your beautiful pictures in Rolling Stone as well. That's,
Oh yeah,
yeah, I mean, and also, Midjourney and all these things, all these you're just getting this you as an artist, now
yeah,
with all these music, AIs as well, you must feel like it's like, which where am I gonna run to what am I gonna
yeah. Well, no, you know what? I've actually thought about it. I mean, look, we have these every problem there's a problem that confronts people. I remember when I was in uh ar- doing art in high school and Photoshop was new and everyone said, "Oh my God,
yeah,
uh, art is dead and really untalented people can create things that they couldn't
mhm,
create." And you still have to be able to draw, I think,
yeah,
and you still and so yes, but the interesting thing I think is happening is that I just finished a solo record. I'm going to be putting it out this year. Um, is that I actually pulled back on like making everything perfect because you listen back to records in like the 90s or whatever pre auto tune, and they aren't perfect. And there was a period where you're like, oh God, I wish they had, it doesn't sound perfect. And someone said to me, oh, our ears have become worse because we can't accept imperfections. And so we're like less sophisticated. And I think that actually because everyone can make stuff that sounds perfect now, um, making something that sounds real is a lot harder. And I think that that might be it, like, so we pulled back on this record where I'm like, "No, no auto tune, like, no fixing stuff." It's like, let's make this raw, like, acoustic.
Mm,
Um, and, uh, and I think that that might be an interesting, um, path that veers as
yeah.
as everything becomes ubiquitous, so that you can do everything on your laptop. So now just being able to actually play and being able to sing and deliver a message is actually a lot harder, or a lot more, maybe not harder, a lot more valuable.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, if you
Um,
look back at, the music from a lot of it could have been made by AI. It seems to be so robotic and, with the loops
yeah.
and everything.
Yeah.
It's already halfway there. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting times.
We'll see what happens. I mean, yeah, I'm actually looking for, I mean, as soon as everyone can take a photo themselves and Barack Obama in front of the Eiffel Tower and like make it look extremely real on Instagram, like all that stuff will just go away because none of it has any meaning. And that's how the same way I feel about, hey, if you can create a hologram so that we could like all see Elvis and the Beatles play in one night, all their
Mm,
music,
mm,
like, it goes up for sale for like, at the, um, and everyone's like, then all of a sudden something real becomes more valued, so
yeah.
if just having an acoustic guitar and playing there and having a real experience, not with a phone, but just like actually being there. And that becomes the sort of valued experience, which is, so there might be, who knows what's going to happen, but like a lot of people I talk to think that that might be the outcome
Mm.
of digital technology being able to like recreate everything. Um,
You know, it's Richard. I feel like we're coming full circle into the interview now, like with, his God after God, and,
that's
you
true.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, music after technology.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's a sobering experience as
Yeah.
opposed to this really, really highly, tweaked, like, I mean, if you go to shows now, it's
Yeah.
like the light, the production has to be so intense for,
Oh, yeah?
especially on like, if you're talking like stadium tours. And so I feel like the simplicity, going back to something simple, and you're right, I mean, that is one element I'd say of, of, I don't wanna say anatheism because God would yell at Richard say that, so.
Right. Well, here he is. You can ask him yourself.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
Hey, Richard.
Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you.
Good.
Great. Well, this is Jay. Big.
Hi, Rich. How are you? Yeah, nice to meet you.
Likewise, likewise. Looking forward to this conversation.
Me
Not quite sure what it's all about, but you can fill me in.
Well, you've just got to inspire a song. So, yeah,
Oh,
no pressure. If you could just be maximum inspiration, give
simplest
answers
thing
you've
in the
never
world.
given before, be the most insightful you could possibly
Okay,
be.
okay.
Oh, Jay's got so many penetrating questions. So, yeah.
I was I was just saying, Richard, that,
Mm,
I was well, you were my first choice, and then this came up, and I was, like, kind of forgot about it, and then, a couple weeks ago when, Jack came back to me and said, "Yeah, Richard has agreed to do it," I was overjoyed, and then I thought to myself, "Oh my god, I'm back in, first year, philosophy, and I'm, completely unprepared to talk to you." As I reread, by the way, I'm an art history and fine arts major, so I'm coming into this conversation purely as a humble, lowly musician who was very inspired by, first Anatheism. And I guess I could just start by saying,
Mm,
maybe qualifying how I got introduced to your work. I was actually walking out. I was doing a pilgrimage. I was walking the Camino in Spain, and I started writing a book while I was there. That was a companion piece to a record that I'd made, based on my family history on the East Coast and in Cape Breton, and stories my grandfather had told me. And I was thinking on a more maximal level about they were Protestants. There was the Protestants and Catholics back there. And this, my on that side, they were also a lot of sailors that had come over as Huguenots, from France, and all these family stories. And I thought, what is it about about narratives like that? What if this fictional sailor, he was writing letters to his granddaughter he'd never met, um, and was trying to tell her about this sort of cursed vision he had of history, and that we were always doomed to repeat the same patterns, and it's to do with Catholics and Protestants and the ocean. And what if that narrative was actually flawed?
Hmm.
There was this one character I had. I'm going to make this really try to make it concise. There's one character I had that discovered these letters, and her name was Anna, Ana. And she was able to. The idea of her character was that she was able, because of her name, which was an anagram, she could look back to the past and look to the future, but she really had no. Um, uh, she had no weight in the present, because she was really an observer, not like omniscient, but an observer. And I just happened to be, so with that in mind, I happened to be listening to CBC as a proud Canadian, and you were, you were on Ideas with Paul Kennedy, talking about anatheism.
Yeah.
And beyond the narrative role in the book, I was also, on a personal level, it just really resonated with me as an artist, but also as someone in a spiritual way, as I was walking the Camino. And this idea, from what I understood, of spirituality versus tradition, and how those two things come together. That's all I'll qualify. So I just would like to ask you, so I don't try to go further. How do you describe anatheism?
Mm. Okay, good. Thank you, Jay. I'm very flattered and honored that a songster would, from Cape Breton ancestry at any rate, would be, interested in the work, and I hope in some way maybe informed or inspired by it, musically. So anatheism, yeah. The Anna is very important, and that's extraordinary what you say about the anagram looking backwards and forwards, because that's in the alliteration itself, right? The three letters. But traditionally in Greek, Anna, going back to Indo-European languages, but Anna can mean again, therefore the repetition or reiteration of something that has happened in the past, a retrieval, revisiting, and also forward. So it can actually mean repeating the past forward. And it's got that nice sense of past and future about it, which I found was important vis-a-vis religion. Like you and your ancestry, I also come from a Catholic Protestant culture, Ireland, North and South, and was always aware of the division and the conflict that could involve, particularly with the 30-year war in Northern Ireland in the 70s and 80s, but also the richness that could give rise to, culturally, poetically, linguistically, living on an island that has two languages, English and Irish, two religions, Catholic, Protestant, and more, but they were the main two, Christian religions, two identities, nationalist and unionist, that, as Seamus Heaney, the Irish poet, said, two buckets are easier carried than one. I grew up in between. So growing up in between these two different cultures, sometimes competing, sometimes conflicting, but also sometimes converging and collaborating, could go either way. We could be locked in the past and repeat, in a kind of compulsive repetition, the religious wars and rivalries and internecine conflicts of the past, or revisit the past forward and make of this duality, Protestant, Catholic, nationalist, unionist, Irish, British, a virtue, a double vision, which is what Anna allows for, a double vision. So that's my first sort of response to what you say about your grandfather and Cape Breton, vis-a-vis where I came from. So in my philosophical work, I was very interested in Anna as this revisiting of religion from a new spiritual perspective. I also did the Camino, and in Europe, in France and Spain, but also pilgrimages in India and Nepal, which were very important for me also interreligiously, because it was in sort of engaging with other religions that I came back to and repeated forward, if I may say, my own Christian sort of wisdom tradition. And the Camino was a way of walking, starting again each day on that ancient path, that's been trodden and retrodden for how many hundreds of years, maybe 1,000 years, by Christian pilgrims on their way to Compostela, which was considered to be, one of the most Western points of civilization and culture, as it was known at the time, of the earth. Even before the new continents were discovered. And I found something about that also coming from Ireland, where the west of Ireland was considered the westernmost point. And I gather if you sail from, let's say, Connemara to outwards towards the west, what was known as the navigatio, everybody was invited spiritually to, particularly the monks and the scholars between the, let's say, 8th and 12th centuries, to make a voyage westwards. And where do they land? Well, Newfoundland and Cape Breton. So that was considered to be, they were looking for the Isles of the Blessed, Tirnanog, or in Irish, or High Brazil. It was even on the maps up until the 17th century. This sort of almost imaginary, but maybe real, place that we would make a pilgrimage to, a voyage to. So that Anatheism was a way of retrieving religion from being something fixed and fixated in the past and liberating it into a journey.
And
I'll stop there.
Well, and this is something that really connected with me when I was actually on the Camino. One thing I was confronted with was doubt, and the doubt of seeing people who were so sure of something. And I was like, and there was, so maybe to fix this in Anatheism, one thing that I was really related to was, postmodernity, Nietzsche, the death of God, the death of the vengeful God, the death of the all-powerful God, in light of pluralism, basically, in our cultures and whatever, and that you can maybe describe this, that you can hold on to tradition while still being able to sway in doubt and uncertainty. And I thought that was a really, really valuable. Now, I know you've also said Anatheism is not a teleology or a new age form of spirituality, and this is sort of something that I've thought about a lot. I don't know if I grasp all the time, and I maybe that's the point, is being in doubt. But that's something that you allow for in Anatheism, and without throwing the baby out with bathwater, without taking out. And that was when I was on the Camino, and maybe around more like people who are very sure of what they think. and therefore exclusionary to what that other people cannot be part of this unless we have this very, very thin place. And that's, I think, the really hard thing for many people to reconcile, or at least myself to reconcile. And I'll let you speak, but that was one thing that I found extremely interesting.
Yeah. Well, doubt is a key feature of anatheism. Anatheist doubt followed by an anatheist wager, a sort of leap of faith in some kind of spiritual other that one can respond to. So coming back to some sources for that kind of anatheist doubt, I quote Dostoevsky, who says famously in one of his novels, true faith comes forth from the crucible of doubt. So that's letting go of what I call the alpha God, the omni God, the God of power and might and vengeance and last judgment, who also sort of not only permits evil, but even condones it and justifies it in terms of some hidden providential design. I mean, we don't know why the Holocaust took place or why the war in Gaza or in Ukraine is taking place, but God has his own reasons for this. That sort of thinking, that it's all part of a plan, right down to violence, torture, and rape. So that notion of giving away one's sense of goodness and decency and responsibility because God will take care of everything, or it's all part of God's design, that's where doubt is very valid. And Dostoevsky in the Brothers Karamazov has the different brothers who represent different views of faith, and he invites the reader in and he says, okay, Ivan is the atheist, the doubter par excellence, and he gives us the Grand Inquisitor, which is an expose of the Inquisition, basically, and the thinking of the Inquisition, where Christ comes back and is actually re-sacrificed, re-crucified by the church. So Dostoevsky is saying through the mouth of Ivan, one of his literary characters, and this is the great thing about literature and poetry, it can take religion and actually revisit it in all kinds of imaginative ways, like Kazanzaki's The Last Temptation of Christ, or Scorsese's movie based on that book. You can actually revisit the mind of Christ, of Abraham, as Kierkegaard does in his fictional account of Fear and Trembling, Abraham bringing his son Isaac to Mount Moriah to sacrifice him and getting into his mind. Now, you can't do that in the 3 or 4 lines in the Bible, but you can when you revisit it artistically, poetically, imaginatively. So doubt is absolutely crucial there. And I also was very influenced by Keats, the Romantic poet, who talks about negative capability. And he says the best position for poetic imagination is negative capability. And he defines it as follows: to be in uncertainty and doubt without the inkling for fact and reason. Right? To find yourself in the midst of uncertainty and doubt without the inkling for fact and reason. So for him, it's kind of basically this radical attention to what's there, right? What's there in nature, in other people, without imposing one's own view. So there's a necessary preliminary doubt in that respect. I mean, the Buddhists have an anatheist formula, which is, you may remember as a singer yourself and a musician, Donovan's song, first there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is. So there's a reality, a naive relationship with the world. Then everything goes into a via negativa, a dark night of the soul, depression, despair, disillusionment, doubt. There is no mountain. And then there is. The mountain returns, and we return to the mountain. But it's now a different kind of spirituality, if you will.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, and I've heard you mention like Virginia Woolf and James Joyce, and I was thinking myself, maybe I was going to put forward another fellow Canadian is Leonard Cohen. He once said, if I knew where the songs were, I'd go there more often. And I felt like that to me represents everything you said. It's like as an artist, you have to have hold on to what you think, hold on to what you've done, but walk into a place that you've never known and hold on to both things quite lightly. Um, and so I was also interested in your concept of the stranger, because I feel as if maybe in music, and I'm making a stretch here, but I see the stranger as sometimes that you've described, I relate to it as the muse, where you don't know how it comes to you each time. And you have to be open to it, and you have to go through a lot of days of irritation, days of frustration, days of, or whatever. And it's never the same way. Could you,
Mm.
now I quit saying that, could you describe what you mean by the stranger, and the importance of the stranger in, anatheistic terms?
Right. Um,
I'll let my dog
okay,
in. Just 1 second. My dog
sure.
scratch. There we go.
Yeah, The Stranger, and maybe linking it up with Leonard Cohen, indeed, his famous line, "You will remember it better than me as a fellow Canadian." It's only through the crack that the light gets in. I've
Yeah,
forgotten that formulation. But that, in a way, is when the where and how and when the muse comes in. It's through the crack. You know, existentialist philosophy says it's when you break down that you can have a breakthrough. And when your habitual, conventional, fixed way of being and thinking, which is full of presuppositions and prejudices and whatnot, certitudes, the lust for certitude, the addiction to certitude, when that breaks down, then we're open to what I call the call of the stranger. And the stranger is that which upsets us in the sense that it prizes us open to a form of listening, to a form of awareness of our own finitude. You know, that's why, say, Heidegger and Sartre and Camus, the existentialists, say that it's when you become aware of your being towards death, your mortality, your finitude, that you can actually then be an authentic person who fully appreciates life. It's through the awareness of your own death that you
Yeah.
become fully aware of life, unless you give in to nihilism. But if you come back to life, having traversed the awareness of your own mortality, then there's something extraordinary, because your life is now not something taken for granted. It's strange. Like when Abraham lets go of Isaac, Isaac comes back to him as a stranger. So the sacrifice is not about blood sacrifice, actually killing his son. No, no, no. Yahweh, the God of love, intercedes and says, no, you've misunderstood. What I'm saying to you is you must give up your son, yourself, your deepest and most intimate possession and property, qua property. Give that up so that you can receive Isaac back, the same person, but as a stranger, as another, as someone in their own right. So it's about listening to the otherness of a person, even listening to the otherness within ourselves. You know, our unconscious is also, as Freud says, unheimlich. It's strange. It's a call to listen to voices within us that we've covered over and repressed. So that's the sense of muse, which of course is linked with memory and music. It's the same mnemosine, the same root in Greek. And yeah.
In terms of the death of, when you're talking about the sort of on a big, large level in the Western world, how we, post-modernity in terms of the death of God. And I've heard you mention this, this also resonates with you. People who are in recovery,
Mm.
who, by necessity, have to find something higher than themselves, and that is, something that resonates deeply with me as someone in recovery. And But also that that for people like that, there's a daily surrender to their condition to that. Uh, and In terms of, it's, what I thought in terms of the, now I'm going to go into a bit of what I understand to be phenomenology of it, but that that even with someone who has no faith but realizes that they have to kill every single part of themselves to survive,
Mm.
has to find something that you can say to them, your lived experience will show you a form of a higher power
Mm.
that you can hold on to as a lived experience, even if you don't have belief. I felt like there was some, I don't know if I'm far off there, but I thought that was sort of an impractical. I know that you stay away from anatheism as a practice, but it seemed to me like that was a really
Mm.
uh, incredible bridge between the what anatheism would be in practice.
Yeah. No, I'm actually for anatheism in practice. In
Yeah.
fact, I think anatheism is lived before it's ever thought about.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm against it. Let's say if anybody wanted to come along, read the book, and set up a new religion with a set of rules, regulations, and rituals and practices, then no, because what I'm writing is just a phenomenological experience, account of my own experience and other people's experience. I draw a lot, as you know, from literature, from poets, and so on. But it is about practice ultimately. I mean, when you say doubt, somebody said, well, I don't really know what you mean by doubt. I just say, well, have you ever woken at 3 o'clock in the morning and wondering what the hell's going on and where you're going and where you've come from? And everybody's experienced that,
Yeah.
that sense of strangeness when they wake up, first thing in the morning, or in the middle of the night, rather. And I like the example of the 12-step movement because that is an openness to a higher power, however it may be defined, right? It can be the light shining in the sky. It can be, the Buddha, Tao, Abraham, Yahweh, Christ, whatever. It can, there are so many names for what this is. It can be, the cosmos, but it's bigger than you. And it comes to you as a stranger because it comes when you no longer are sufficient to yourself. I think in the 12-step movement, and I think AA should be called Addicts Anonymous because I think it's much more than alcohol. I think the addictions and attachments are so deep and so various. Today it would be AA would be, AI attachment. It's people addicted to their digital prosthetic devices. But it's that middle step, I don't know which one it is in the 12, where you acknowledge your helplessness before your pathological attachment, which is actually killing you and hurting others around you. And then that's where the crack, the chink emerges and the light gets in and you're open to a stranger. That's really what the stranger is. Something that comes to you from beyond you and that is more than you. And that says, here I am. And yes, you can do more. You can do better. You can live again. But that comes from another. It can never come from one's own self. There's a lovely poem, just coming back to this idea of, death and life, cycles, and giving up everything, abandonment, the A of abandonment, which is the first day of Anna, which then goes through the night, the N of Anna, to come to the second day, which I call the A of adieu, which adieu can mean either goodbye God, adieu, abnegation, let go of God, or it can mean in the second instance, adieu as hello. Adieu can mean both. The sense of abandonment and abandoning, letting go, and then the sense of arrival, advent, welcoming, adieu as welcoming the stranger still to come. And I think this is what, by the way, goes on in the Christian story in the cross. You have Christ on the cross who has to let go of his attachment to the Father as the one who will solve all one's problems, right? The God of theodicy and triumph and omnipotence. And so he says, please take away this chalice, let it pass from me. And then he says, my God, why have you abandoned me? But in saying that, he's given up. He himself is abandoning the God who's abandoned him. Because there is no God of power and might who can come down and rescue the Jews in Auschwitz, or you in sweating in your bed at night, faced with your own mortality and anxiety and depression. God doesn't come like that. God as the stranger, it comes in strange ways. And that's the third moment of the crucifixion, when Christ says, "Unto thee I commend my spirit," and that's an abandonment to thy spirit. And that's the higher power, I think, that is invoked also in the 12-step movement, that enables the stranger to come to us. And then the stranger, and it's interesting, the word for stranger in all Indo-European languages can mean friend or enemy. So we usually see the stranger, what is outside of us, what is strange, alien, other, unfamiliar, as enemy. And we're very often hostile to it. We secure our egos against it. And the word in Latin, of course, is hostis. Hostis can mean either hostility, the enemy, or hospitality. It's the same root, hostis, hospes. And I think that's very interesting, that we go from fearing the other as hostile, hostis as hostile, stranger, to welcoming the other, or the other in the other, which is hospitality to the stranger. And that's coming back to practice, what I tried to do as director of the guest book project in narrative exchange, where we bring together young people throughout the world and in divided communities and have them exchange their narratives. It's turning hostility into hospitality, exchanging stories, changing history. So that's what I would consider to be an anatheist practice, along with 12-step movement is another example, as is, waking in the middle of the night and saying, where the hell am I? And then saying, like Samuel Beckett, I can't go on, I go on.
Yeah. And it's that abandonment of self. I feel like you understand that, like, you're God in allowing God, and it's not God, can you save me and my selfhood in a powerful way. It's like I abandon myself to the outcome of whatever horrible outcome that I think might be coming my way. And then the power comes from the powerlessness and surrender.
Yes. Yeah.
What is the, and you mentioned,
and can I just say, a horrible outcome, but not necessarily. It may be horrible. It may be something you can hope for. It may be love rather than fear, but you do have to let go of the ego in order to open to the genuine self, which is self as another, oneself as another, as Paul Ricoeur puts it.
Right. And I used to say, well, how the heck is anyone going to know what I want? I know it best, which was obviously very selfish. What's the importance of, you sort of touched on it with Jesus on the cross, the importance of atheism and secular, and of the option of atheism, and the secular, the sacredness of the secular in the evolution of anatheism, I guess. Yeah.
Well, the atheist moment on the cross for Christians is, my God, why have you forsaken me? He doesn't believe in that God who comes down, is parachuted down and rescues him from the cross and makes him into the king of the world.
Yeah.
That's Christ's atheistic moment, as is also, and Dostoevsky is very good on this in the Brothers Karamazov, the Grand Inquisitor, temptation, which is, Christ is in the desert 40 days, and along comes the devil and says, you can be the commander of all the cities in the world, the prince and the king. You can throw yourself off the cliff and be rescued by angels and perform a mass miracle, prove to everybody you're the God of all gods. Or you can turn the bread to stone to bread, rather. Don't you want it to give food to everybody who's hungry? And they're the three greatest temptations, because then Christ would be a God who cannot be doubted. In other words, be a certainty of power and security. And that's not what God is. That's what idolatry is. So Christ goes through his atheistic moments. Even when the Syrophoenician woman comes to him and says, can you cure me? And Jesus says, go away. He's very cruel. He's very unchristian. And he's there with his male disciples, and they're having their meal. And she comes back, and she's Syro and Phoenician. She's Syrian. She's Phoenician. She's a Gentile. She speaks Greek, not Hebrew or Aramaic. She's got a sick child, so she carries, the stigma of illness. And a possessed child, even more so. So they say, go away. And she says, but you're letting the dogs eat the crumbs from your table. Why don't you give me some of your crumbs? And Jesus turns to her and says, I've never seen such faith in all of Israel. So that's a moment where Christ is atheistic vis-a-vis what he thought was his mission. And he's open to who? And he's opened by who? A stranger, a woman, Gentile, somebody carrying illness, all of that. That's where the stranger is. It's not a concept, it's a practice. He's surprised by the fact that this woman, who is the least of all and the most baptized, is actually the one who's reminding him of what it means to be truly Christ-like.
So now I have a question. This is what I really am interested in. I was interested in all the others, but one thing that you mentioned a lot is, and I think this relates, is the idea of uncompromising hospitality to the other. I think, in Canada, I can say that this is being tested all around the Western world. There's an idea that how does a liberal society contend with illiberal ideas or groups in a real politic way? Like, how does uncompromising hospitality work? And this is something I struggle with when you are confronted with very inhospitable ideas or people, because now we're going back to this idea of the God that is powerless. So it doesn't mean you become run over by those things, with uncompromising hospitality, which is what some people say, well, that's the path. You can't, in the real world, you have to have borders, you have to have boundaries and rules that people cannot cross, because that's just the way, that's human nature. So how do you reconcile compromising hospitality in that?
Well, a lot of times it's impossible. And if God means anything, it's the possibility of the impossible. Like when you're in AA, at an AA meeting, it's impossible to cure yourself. So you believe in the impossibility of the possible, right? That something that's impossible for you can actually be possible for God. That's what the three strangers say to Abraham and Sarah when they say, you will have a child, as they're eating under the manna tree. And Abraham and Sarah say, no, it's impossible. We're barren, and we're old, 300 years old, or whatever. And they say, what is impossible to you, for humans, is possible to God. So God has a possibility beyond the impossible. And that happens exactly the same phrase is used in Luke when Gabriel appears to Mary and says, you're going to have a child, and same scenario. And she replies, the same words are used by Gabriel. What is impossible to you? Because she says, it's Edunatan. I can't have a child. And Gabriel says, what is impossible for you, for human, is possible to God. So in other words, what is unconditional hospitality? It's actually impossible. It's not something we can do. We can't have open borders. We just can't. It's not possible. There'd be no Canada. There'd be United States. There'd be no Ireland. You'd have millions and millions of people. So nobody'd have enough food. There wouldn't be enough shelter. So it is impossible. But you still believe in the possibility of the impossible. And that kind of openness allows for little things to happen. Little acts of reform or kindness, or thinking about others, finding other solutions, whatever they might be, that you don't give up. It's like Beckett's unnameable narrator, Samuel Beckett's, he says, I can't go on. It's impossible. I'll go on. Right? I can't be unconditionally hospitable. I can only be conditionally hospitable. But you know what? I will try again and again to be more hospitable by finding ways, cracks, fractures in the system that allow the stranger to somehow survive, live, even being aware, even being worried about the stranger, the refugee, even if you can't let them in, is already a way of caring. It's already a way of caring. So I think that's important. And in terms of people, how do you remain hospitable to people? We won't mention any names at the moment since censorship is allowed and well, but how do you shake hands with the devil? How do you shake hands with the dictators of this world? And yet, if you don't shake hands with the devil, if you don't meet the enemy as hostis and talk to him, it's usually a him, nothing can happen. Now, it seems impossible to do it. Like, how could Zelensky talk to Putin? How could he shake hands with Putin? It's impossible. And yet, maybe something strange might happen. Who knows? For us, it's that kind of unconditional hospitality is impossible. One can only think of hostility. And yet, and the thing about it is, it's not black and white. And it's not like you have a eureka atheist moment and then you're saved and you're a saint or you're an angel for the rest of your life. You're enlightened, and you walk around saying, I'm unconditionally hospitable. Hostility and hospitality kind of flip back and forth all the time. Dorothy Day, who used to have these hospitality houses in Detroit, downtown Detroit and New York and what have you, Philadelphia, for the downs and outs and the helpless and the homeless. And she'd say 3:00 in the morning, if there's a knock at the door and somebody's there, a stranger who wants to come into the house for food and shelter, she doesn't know whether it's Siddhartha or Jack the Ripper, Jesus Christ or Jack the Ripper. It could be either. So one's initial response is one of hospitality, I want to let you in, but also hostility, you could be dangerous. You could come in and knife, this young woman who's just sought refuge for domestic violence and abuse. So it's always this, what I call a wager of having to weigh up, and it's huge ethical responsibility to weigh up, how hospitable can I be while protecting those around me and myself? And that's a question that's asked every day at Borders, in our world. It's a massive, huge problem, and each time it's a wager.
In terms of, you mentioned Russia, Ukraine, and in terms of your experience with Northern Ireland and your personal Catholic Protestant, what is the biggest? And you mentioned the guest book project. So this is another question I had was, what do you find is the biggest obstacle in two groups being able to bridge a collective narrative that can get them past conflict? What are the?
Yeah. Here I would say anatheist faith is actually anatheist imagination. And imagination is moving from the logic of either you're Catholic or you're Protestant, either you're Irish or you're British, to a logic of both and. And in the Good Friday Agreement in 1998 in Belfast, the formula that unlocked not only 30 years of violent war, but also 300 years of colonial conflict on the island of Ireland was the phrase, you can be British or Irish or both.
Right.
You could be British or Irish or both. And it was the both. And I think that's kind of the trick, the anatheist trick, if you will, if we can work towards it. It's another way of thinking where you exchange narratives, you keep your own narrative, but you also exchange your narrative with the other, the stranger, the adversary, the opponent, and take their narrative on board. And in that exchange of narratives, sometimes something happens, which is very akin to humor, because it's very akin to humility and humanity, which all come from the same root, humus, earth, that we all come from the earth. We're all born naked and we'll die naked. We are flesh. We are suffering and acting flesh. And therefore we're vulnerability. Aristotle says, and I wrote a book called Touch, that touch is the most vital of all our senses, because in touch, we are in contact with people. We're tangible and tactile. We can see without being seen from a distance. We can be surveyor of the world, master and possessor of the world, as Descartes says, through sight, optocentrism. But when we become tactile and tangible, we're vulnerable. And the skin is our largest or wraparound organ. It's only our hair and our nails that don't feel. It's the first sense we have when we're born, the last. We share that with everybody. So exchanging narratives is a way of discovering I'm not the only person. I can also expose myself to feel what wretches feel, as Shakespeare says, and take on board through imagination, through narrative imagination, the story of the other. And in that exchange, something may happen. And I found with some of the young people who do exchange of narratives, and they say, no, this is my story and you're my enemy. And then they take on board each other's stories. They end up sometimes with a handshake, which is interesting because it's flesh on flesh, bare hand on bare hand, vulnerability, but also humor. And I found that amazing. In Northern Ireland, for example, one of our earliest videos, because we worked through digital storytelling, was two girls, one from a Catholic, one from a Protestant school. And they told the story of Derry, London Derry, it even has two names. For Protestants, it's Londonderry. They're inside the walls of the city. They're protecting themselves from backward Catholic, rule from Rome, benightedness. They're preserving civic and civil rights. And then the Catholics are outside the wall in the bog side, and they represent the story of oppression and, disenfranchisement and colonization and whatnot. And so they told their respective histories as to why they should, be the rightful possessors of the town of Derry. And then they exchanged uniforms and they went into each other's schools. And as they did, they started roaring laughing because they found it so funny to be wearing the uniform, blue or the green of their respective schools. And very often it is humor that unlocks the impossible, because humor is not rational. It's not even conceptual. It's when you're faced with a contradiction. Laurel and Hardy. One is and big and tall, the other is skinny and small. You put them together, juxtaposition of opposites, both, and you laugh. So funny, laughter is humor. I call it in Anatheism in the book, is one of the key moments of the Anatheist wager, because it opens us to the impossible, to the contradictory, and Coleridge defines imagination as the yoking together of opposite and discordant qualities. And that's what poetry does. That's what song does. That's what art does. Picasso can paint his partner, his lover, Jacqueline Roch, from three different sides. You can't see somebody like that, but he can mix up perspectives. That's what imagination can do. So I don't think there can be any genuine faith that isn't at the same time imagination.
That's beautiful. I love the humor part. And so I know that, in any way to, what I understand, to describe God is constricting and becomes the God of ownership. And now it can lead, I think in your words, to war or whatever. My one question is, and maybe that you sort of hit in my mind on it with the humor part, if you can't describe God because it limits it to our terms, are there telltale signs and verbs or things that happen, like you're mentioning humor, where you go, okay, God, the higher God or whoever comes in many different forms, but there's a sort of telltale sign that says, scribbled on the wall, God was here, or are there actions or events like, well, everyone's laughing now, are there and in your experience, are there things that happen that show the signs of something larger?
Well, I mean, it's funny you say that, because laughter is the word of God. Eckhart has a wonderful, Meister Eckhart, the medieval Rhine mystic, wonderful phrase where he says, God laughed and gave birth to the Son laughed and gave birth to the Spirit laughed and gave birth to the Father. And it's this dance, this play, in a circle. Circumcessio was the term used in Latin to describe the Trinity, that is birthing each person, saying, after you, as they take each other's place, and they move in a circle, in a dance, in a play. And that is the image that Andrei Rublev, the great Russian icon maker, takes to describe the hospitality of Abraham, the three persons, the three strangers who come to Abraham. And interestingly, what does Sarah do when they say, you shall come back? We shall come back in a year, and you will have given birth to a child. She says, do not, it's impossible. And she laughs. And Isaac, the son, the impossible son that she gives birth to, is the Hebrew for laughter. So in fact, monotheism, good monotheism, Anatheist monotheism, and it's only one of the wisdom traditions, Abrahamic monotheism, begins with laughter.
That's beautiful. It's incredible. Um, so is it possible now, in terms of interreligious dialogue, is it possible between, if uh, considering that the importance of atheism, if a religion, if a tradition doesn't have room for non-belief, is it possible to have the same kind of dialogue between? So there's a tradition in the, say, Catholic and Protestant. At least there has been a long tradition of dissent,
Mhm.
uh, of disbelief, So is that possible when you're in between two groups, that if one group says, no, there is no such thing as state, there is no such thing, there's only one reality, and that is God. God is the state. Uh, is there, in your experience, does that present a problem for?
Absolutely. But, nobody that ever said God is the state, um, a national God, a state religion, a nation state religion, has ever held to that. It always, you'll get your dissenters, your reformers, your
Yeah,
your saints, your mystics, your martyrs, whatever. There's always the dissenting voice. And sometimes people look to Islam and they say, well, theocracy and so on. Well, no, there are 72 forms of Islam. And, there are different ways of living it in multiple different countries and cultures throughout the world. And there's the Sufi tradition, that likewise is a very mystical tradition and sees the way to God. If you read Rumi or Hafiz, it's through play, it's through laughter, it's through wine, it's through dance. And
yeah,
sometimes forget, and I think Rumi is the most read poet in the world today, but a lot of people don't know that he's actually Islamic, or
yeah,
could
fair.
there's the whole tradition of poetic humor and dance and play in Islam, and ditto, I would say, in all the world religions, you will always find the God of play and laughter, which, by the way, is also the God of love. I mean, you said, are there signs written on the wall like
Yeah,
Kilroy?
God.
Kilroy was here. I was here. God was here. Well, yeah, it's one person giving a cup of cold water to another, or laughing with another person, or playing with another person. And I think that's where the notion of the child, even in Nietzsche's kind of atheistic spirituality, is the key to the sacred. Suffer little children to come unto me. In nearly all religions, Krishna is the child God. You will find that it is this simplicity of the child who plays, who laughs, who loves, kind of unconditionally, and you might even say naively, that is a model for the adult who has built up this fortress ego, and that it can't laugh, can't play, can't love.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Um, I completely agree with you. And, actually, just in terms of, we play shows around the world, and, especially now, everyone has this need to, talk about politics, which I always think is the lowest vibration and least interesting part of who people are. And it's the most divisive. And so, we, that's not part of our shows. And my goal on stage is to connect with people in like laughter and in
Mhm.
music, because I think that's where you get to actually see who people actually are. But we have this need right now to really take it to a lower, like one of the least interesting parts of someone's personality, which is, who do they vote for? Um, my, thinking, in terms of my own journey, and what originally, when I was introduced to your work, we were living in a different polarity, which was, I went through my Christopher Hitchens phase of, and Richard Dawkins phase, and I think that, originally the Anatheism was positioned as a path beyond this sort of stale conversation between there is no God, there is God, and can we move beyond that? Those people,
Mm.
I would say, culturally now are gone. I mean, and like even Richard Dawkins has really softened that, and I think rightly so. It's somewhat of a dogmatic approach, but we're moving into, from what I see, especially with younger guys that I know, uh, moving into a really different area, which is probably a really old area, which is traditional fundamentalism from different traditions. I was I'm wondering how you and atheism, the new atheists. That's not part of the conversation in the West anymore.
No.
So how do you see? Do you have any thoughts on what's happening now
Hmm.
in the West and a move to
Yeah, but you see, I think both forms of fundamentalism are are being exposed as failures, be it the rationalist fundamentalism of the Dawkins and the Hitchens, who in a way played an important role in saying from the point of view of strict scientific reason, we can't prove God. They're absolutely right about that. But to turn that into a fundamentalist principle, therefore, there is no such thing as what people, probably 80% of people in the world, call God or some version of it, is pure nonsense. They're ruling out the fact that there might be something that is supra-rational or infra-rational.
right.
And they need to lighten up. You got to get Hitchens and Dawkins laughing, just as you got to get the Ayatollahs and the fundamentalists from the theistic religions, the dogmatic theistic religions laughing. That's the only solution. When John Scotus Erugena, the first great Irish philosopher, was called by King Charles the Bald to Europe after the Dark Ages to translate the Greek patristic text, sacred texts, into Latin, from Greek to Latin, he was one of the few people who could do it. So he brought a band of fellow monks from the island of Ireland, which had held on to, the scriptures and whatnot during the Dark Ages and the Viking invasions and the Germanic invasions. And there he is, 9th century, he arrives in the court of Leon in France, and he's put into a house to translate these sacred texts. And the king can't sleep at night. Why? Because they're laughing all the time. So they call it the Domus Hilaritas, the house of laughter. And they're keeping everybody awake. So he calls in Erugena. John Scotus Erugena means John the Scot, the Irishman. Same, Ireland and Scotland were the same at the time. Erugena, born in Ireland. And he says to him, why are you laughing all the time? And he said, because we're studying God. And God is funny. God is funny.
Yeah.
So God is hilaritas. That's how he defined God, hilaritas.
Yeah.
So there's something about that. And another thought that comes to mind. So I would get the fundamentalists laughing. And that also means playing. And that also means using their narrative imagination to conceive of what it might be like to think otherwise, believe otherwise, live otherwise. And that's where art and music, come in. A lot of people who are radical atheists can listen to your music or Leonard Cohen's music or John Lennon's music or, Donovan's music, or many others, and actually have a sense of the sacred and the spiritual. They can't get it if it's kind of hardcore fundamentalist religion, but they can get it through art. And most of my examples actually in Anatheism are from artists and writers. And there's one other Irish artist I might invoke here, Patrick Kavanagh, who to me is an excellent example of Anatheism, in that he went through a death experience. He was having an operation in a hospital in Dublin for a lung disease, and basically he kind of was at death's door. He had an operation. He thought he was dying. He came to afterwards. He survived. And he opens his eyes and he wrote this poem called Hospital Ward. I won't read the whole thing or recite the whole thing, but it ends with a description of all the things he sees through the window, out in the yard, the broken iron railing, the pebbles in a little pile, the leaf piled up, the leaves piled up in a corner, etc. And he describes these things, pure happenstance, discarded, ordinary, everyday, banal things. And he ends with this line, naming these things, and this is where art comes in, poetry, music, what you do, naming these things, or singing these things, but he says naming, as he is singing and naming in a poem. Naming these things is the love act and its pledge, to snatch out of time the passionate transitory. And that's what art does. It snatches out of time. It's aware of time, death, mortality, we're born, we die. To snatch out of this transitory time, the passionate transitory, that, you turn it into this passion. And that's Anatheist. You're living posthumously almost. and seeing
Yeah.
the world again as if for the first time. That's negative capability, to be in the midst of mystery, uncertainty, and doubt, and not hanker after faith and reason. If you hanker after faith and reason, you're left with the new atheism, which is
Yeah.
dogmatic and fundamentalist, although it has its role. So it's to relive the mystery as a genuine mystery, not as a dogma or a doctrine.
And finding it in the little things.
Finding it in the little things, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm about to release a new record. I loved hymns growing up when I was, and I had about 150 person choir singing on these songs. And one of the things kind of making that it's a somewhat funny album in the sense that I was musing about the fact that love on a really intimate level, like my love for my son, Finn, who's 4, my wife, sometimes my dog, is very real and authentic and manageable. And as you sort of start to take love onto a larger scale, whether into a group setting, it can become extremely insane. It can be very ungrounded. And so you see people committing atrocities based on love of God. And I thought that it's so absurd. I mean, going to it, like sort of like seeing it in a Camus kind of way, like it's so absurd, the things that we do on that level. And so this album is sort of juxtaposing those two, that you can't, I was sort of also relating this to anatheism in the sense that on a small scale where it has doubt, where it's grounded in small things and in my own personal surroundings, it isn't perverted by something, but somehow in the mix of getting larger and larger and larger, it becomes this egotistic insanity that can be that can justify in like absolutely atrocious behavior.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm very interested in what you're saying, and look forward to hearing your new record. I think the lust for abstraction and perfection are so deleterious to good human living and decent human living. And I think it's by going back to the least of these, which you find in the Gospels, but also invoked by the Buddha and, in Hinduism and Confucianism. It's the least of these, alakistos in Greek, that you find the sacred, the God of little things, as Arundhati Roy, the Indian novel, put in. My next book is named Gods and Dogs. And it starts with the story of the Syrophoenician woman saying, look, you're giving it to the dogs, you're giving your crumbs to the dogs. Why don't you just treat me as well as you treat your dog? And then I will be healed. And I think accepting that God is a dog, and it's just written backwards, is a way of accepting that it's the least of these that actually are the most sacred, and they're staring us in the face. They're walking with us like your dog, like my dog. And if you go on my website, you see me walking my dog. I was asked once, if you ever go to heaven, what would it be for you? I said, walking my dog.
Yeah,
probably with my wife and children. But the dog is there because the dog is a reminder of where we came from. It's a reminder of our animal nature, and this is so important. You were asking for signs in our times. I think one is the ecological side of things. Our planet is in danger. Our world is in danger. The earth is in straits. It's crying out. And, whether it was the pandemic from the point of view of the disease of our bodies, or the climate crisis, the disease of planet Earth, we've become aware of, our passionate transitory, so to speak. It's passing. It's finite. It's vulnerable. It's fragile. And that is a reminder of how important the body is. You don't know what you've got till it's gone, as one of your compatriots, Joni Mitchell, once sang. And in the pandemic, we discovered that we lost touch. We couldn't touch people anymore. And social distancing. And suddenly we realized how important touch was. And people were dying in the hospitals in the early days before, there was a vaccine and everything. They were reaching out almost invariably to the caretakers, the nurses, the doctors. They couldn't see their relatives and family to be touched. And that's absolutely fundamental, it seems to me, to come back to the dog in each one of us. And I say the dog because in the Semitic biblical culture, the dog was the lowest of the low. we've domesticated dogs in the West, but it was the hostis par excellence, the stranger, the outsider, the carrier of diseases, absolutely the least of these. And so accepting that in ourselves, that's when you can laugh. When you can say God and dog in the same sentence, you recognize that the sacred is hilaritas. Hilarity is the way to redemption for us, for our bodies as beings of flesh, and for the world as a world of flesh, the earth, humus.
Yeah. I will say this too. I absolutely love my dog. I said it as a joke that I only sometimes love her. Marge is fantastic. Just because this is going to be public, any dog lovers out there, we treat her really well.
Well, that's unconditional hospitality, by the way. And if you want to know, if you want an example of unconditional love and hospitality, look at your dog.
Yes. It's, and that is what makes, when I had a dog that was a rescue dog from Alabama, Oscar, and one of the hardest things I ever had to do was when we had to put him down. And I was reconciling, I mean, that is it because it's such a direct bond where you don't have to ever question you. There was never a questioning of like, wow, they were kind of annoying that day. Like they were so devoted there. It's a direct line of just pure love that you feel for this thing. And so, there's a spiritual moment to that. Anyways, it's one of there's something I was joking with someone. I'm like, your grandmother or grandfather can die, but somehow putting your dog down was the hardest thing you ever, no disrespect to them.
No, it's very important. And they were there, there's footprints going back that they discovered in prehistoric caves, 40,000 years. Human footprints and canine footprints go, foot by foot, hand in hand. It's one of our oldest connections with the animal world. And it's very interesting during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, that people were appreciating again the absolutely central importance of canine therapy, equine therapy, working also with dolphins, but creatures of skin, and touching and being touched by animals became absolutely essential. Equine and horses and dogs were the earliest animals with which humans were connected. For other indigenous cultures, it can also be the bear, it can be the wolf, it can be the raven. But we've lost that in the West. We've become masters and possessors of nature rather than seeing ourselves as guests and hosts of nature. We're part of nature. It's not out there to be exploited and colonized and computed and classified. We're part of it. And dogs can remind us of that.
Yes. And that they're completely helpless to our own behavior as well. Anyway, I was thinking, I'm forgetting the name of the monk who is a French monk who was walking the Camino, and was rescued he was starving on the path, and he was rescued by a dog who brought him a loaf of bread. Some local farmer's dog brought him a loaf of bread. And I'm trying to remember. I was actually about to do an image of it because I saw someone who had, had an 18th century church window stained glass thing made of it, and so I'm doing a version of it. Anyways, I can't remember. I was going to ask you if you knew of this story because I can't. Saint. No, he's not the monk.
Yeah. Well, there's a famous saint that you'll see in a lot of the churches on the Camino. And it's Saint, his name will come back to me in a second. And you see the saint there, and his knee is bare and bleeding, and his dog is with him. Is it Bruno? I'm not sure. But anyway, that's there as part of our iconography, particularly in early medieval Europe. I think it's Saint Bruno. And I'm thinking of Asclepius in the Greek tradition. The god was always there in the healing ceremonies, the dog and the horse and the snake, but the dog was crucial. And, St. Francis, one of the big stories of St. Francis, who, brother, sun, sister, moon, the first great Christian ecological saint, was the meeting with the wolf in Gubbio, in the cave in Gubbio. Yeah. The wolf is just the dog as a stranger, before it's domesticated. But that's the challenge, to turn the wolf into the dog, so to speak.
Yeah. Right. Well, whole new me. I don't know if you guys can see Marge sleeping here. She's
there you go.
The whole time.
God bless.
God bless you, Mark. God
Yeah.
bless you.
God bless.
Thank you so much. I mean, this is all the questions I had and more. It's been such an enjoyable conversation, Richard. Thank you for speaking with me.
Likewise, I forgot it was being recorded, which is always a good sign.
Well, now I
Thank
want
you,
to
Jack.
dog. Now I want to read Gods and Dogs. I'm sure that's not what it was, but it's a fantastic, irreverent title or irreverence.
It is.
So
Could be a good title for a song.
Gods and Dogs. Yeah, I love it. It's fantastic.
We'll do a road show together, Jay.
You know what? I'm open to that anytime you want to do that. Because like I said, it's these things that you pick up in life. Like, for me, listening to CBC one day and hearing you speak about anatheism and my just immediately the hairs going on the back of my neck. Like I'm thinking that's exactly what I need to hear right now. And you pick this book up and then to be like all these years later, have the opportunity to like actually speak to you in person. It's just so cool. I that's the part of life that I'm like, I wake up this morning and go, hey, I'm so grateful to be here. So
likewise, and it's an honor and a pleasure, and I'm very flattered and look forward to listening to the music.
Yeah, now the pressure's on. I feel like it was just, I was like, I had some ideas before and now I'm like, oh, it's got to be Gods and Dogs now.
There you go. If the spirit moves you. All right.
Is the book ready to be proofed? Do you have it?
No, I got a contract with Columbia, but I haven't. I'm taking a sabbatical in Ireland this fall, so I hope to. Yeah,
I was just going to say Jay could read it and.
Well, absolutely. I mean, once I get sort of a first readable draft, I'll send it to you, Jay.
I love that. It's funny. We'll actually, my wife, Steph, is a professional step dancer and a fiddle player. So she does a lot of Celtic.
Right.
Hence our son, Finn. And so we're heading over. Finn is obsessed with bagpipes. And so we're going over to Ireland and not to Ireland first for Steph in the fall. And then we're going in August, sorry. And then going to the Edinburgh tattoo.
Perfect. Well, maybe we'll meet up in Ireland. I'm usually there for 2 or 3 months in the summer. So if you're around, come.
Yeah,
and
we will be. There's no way. It's actually part of our honeymoon. We're finally getting married after the pandemic. We kind of put it off. And she's like, I was like, can we go somewhere hot? And she's like, no, we're going to Ireland. I'm like,
yeah, it's
not
hot.
Oh, I know. We've played shows there. I was like, a classic place for just relaxing on your honeymoon. Just like
it's up there with Cape Breton. This will be a homecoming.
I know. No, I was like, beaches of Ireland. Everyone talks about the beaches of Ireland as being a fantastic place to relax. And anyways, it's beautiful. We love it. I can't wait to go. So
yeah. Well, let me know when you're coming over and maybe we'll meet up there. All right.
Fantastic.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll stay on with Jay for a minute. We'll do a debrief.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll just sign off. There we go. Oops. Voilà.
Well done,
There
Jay.
you go.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Did a great job, mate.
Did I? I was
No.
okay.
Yeah, because you've been interviewed so many times. It's unusual for the artist for you have to do the interview.
And the challenge is always letting them is well, with Richard, a lot of, I was like, he's saying so much interesting, so many things that I was like, oh, you go down any path with it.
Yeah. You got so many great lyrics. I was like, reiteration, revisiting, repeating the past forward, and living posthumously. You've just got to make it rhyme, and you've got the song there. I'll send you the transcripts.
I love it. And it's, Jack, what an incredible opportunity to, because you mentioned artists and I was like, yeah, I know artists though. I know how they speak and I don't, hey, look, like, speaking to a painter, sure. But there's always the challenge of the unknown of like speaking to somebody who had very challenging ideas about the world that, so it was such a fantastic opportunity. I was like, that's why I was, each day, like being like, hey, I got this question. I mean, probably rehearse this more than I did for my last record. So
Well, no, it's good to be out of your comfort zone because you've been an artist for such a long time. You need to do something new. And can I ask you
yeah,
what you ask you a personal question? And so, what are
yeah.
you mentioned, recovery. What are your spiritual beliefs now? Where do you stand on the spectrum?
Well, it's I stand in the I don't know.
Okay,
This is sort of an
that's a
anatheistic.
big area too.
It's a bit well, what it is that, and I sort of described it. I think from that for me, love is in its
Mm,
pure, and it's easy to express that, but somehow you can't take that and transplant it to a larger group setting and not have it somehow be shifted into a thing that is that's complicated, but it's really uncomplicated in an intimate way. So my spiritual beliefs, and I do sort of ground them in a tradition. Like I do, for me, Christianity has, I think it's just because it was how it's so embedded within our Western culture.
yeah, for sure.
And and I do see all of them as just vehicles to what you're ultimately getting to, which is um, a higher vibration, and also how you treat other people directly within your life. Um, that I find the tradition, the story resonates. I don't worry too much about it. In terms of like, um, I also, as I do, I struggle with the idea that anything is exclusionary, because I think that that
Mm,
is so counterintuitive to the feeling that you have when you are spiritually connected to the world. Is that that you in all faiths feel this sense of connectedness, that we are that in hurting somebody else, you're hurting yourself. In the way you do something, these things are all connected.
mm,
And so that said, uh, for me, one of the in practice, it's me reaching out to other people who that struggle with, I got sober probably over 7.5 years ago, and that um, whether it's people in music or uh, outside of music, I find that connection is such a real way for me to connect
mm.
spiritually with people. S- I don't know if that answered what you were asking.
No, yeah, I get you. What you're saying a spiritual person. That's
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is, and but there's something, if I'm really honest, and it's a part of me that I kind of find funny, but I love the pomp and circumstance of certain things. So when, I'm not Catholic, but when I go into a Catholic church and see the big organ and like the incense, and I'm like, there's something about this that that really, I'm like, I like this a bit. And I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I like this a bit too much. Why is this? And I don't know what it is. I just love that. There's something about that massive amount of tradition in it, and anywhere where you go and you're just in awe of it. It's like, this is very cool. Now, that said, look, if I'm around people who are really dogmatic, I immediately go, you can have that. I don't need it.
yeah, yeah.
um, and so that's it. But I am a sucker for some good like old school hymns, and
Okay. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Hence the new record with 150 people on there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Although if you heard the lyrics, I mean, this is the funny part, is the lyrics are sort of poking fun at that. So like, uh, there's
Layers within layers.
I have 150 people singing, like belting out holy guns. There's a gun for everyone. Let's shoot
Okay.
let's shoot ourselves to heaven like a bullet in the sun. So I mean, they're not,
Okay.
but they're, and which is, obviously absurd, and
Hmm.
it's meant to be, that we can somehow kill ourselves to heaven. And I think that, but
Well, Christianity was established
oh,
on the blade of the sword. They said that.
that I
It
mean,
says in the Bible.
we see right now, like
Yeah.
it's not limited to Christianity. It's not limited to anything, but it's like it's on a, here we look at love on a large level. You
Yeah.
can literally say, I love my God, and kill someone. That is so insane
Hmm.
that you have to, with distance from it, you can laugh at that and go like, that is so insane that you
Yeah.
could believe that,
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that, that you, that And that is in a really real way. You go like, that can only happen on a group level.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it within your family.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. Yeah.
Couldn't say to your mom or dad, "You proud of me? I killed someone." Like, you can't. That it doesn't work that way. I killed my
No.
brother, killed my sister. That would be. But on a group level, we can allow it. That
Well, they do have honor killings in some. But anyway, we're going down a
that's
rabbit hole. Yeah.
yeah. We
You're,
go.
you're coming up. The sun's coming up in Canada.
I'm back.
Like, you're being illuminated, like you're glowing. So this, I better
didn't
leave you
realize-
to get
Yeah.
on the song, and while you're hot to trot, and yeah,
Dogs.
yeah,
I love that. It is what a great concept.
yeah.
And
We
what
could release the song of the episode with the with the book when it comes out. You could do a musical version of it.
I'd love to. What a nice man too. I just think that his work is so, especially in the face of how sure we are right
Mhm.
now in the world that there's such a necessity for people to say, "Are you sure?" Do you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And in that moment of questioning that, you get to actually have some sort of uh, realization forward. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
yeah. All right. Well, if you do go to LA, do check out the Theory Society. I did send you.
okay, yeah, I am intrigued by this. I
Yeah.
will. Let's stay in touch because
Because you
would
heard
love-
about that. You heard about Richard's book for a podcast. Maybe you. The Nine Freedoms is the book. It's
the 9 freedom. Okay.
yeah, Ascension after Ascension, Cosmic Existence. So it's like a space age.
So this and Dr. King, is his name Dr. King?
Yeah.
He did this. He started, did he come from a tradition or did he just come to yoga? And how
Yeah,
did
he
he?
came- Yeah, after the war, he just did yoga for 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day for 10 years. Like, real serious practice, pranayama, mantra.
Yeah.
That's like really. So then he raised Kundalini and
Yeah.
so it's like this East meets West meets. It's a lot, even, just as a metaphysical treaty, if you don't believe in any of it, just to read it, it's got a lot of interesting concepts. I think you'd really enjoy.
I will, well, transcendental meditation is also something that I've always,
Oh, wow.
I still practice now, in terms of meditation. Yoga came from Maharishtra, but yoga it's a real barrier, which it said to me, this is one of the things that whoever my higher power is, whenever I say no, it's like, that's where you have to go. So I go, I'm super inflexible. I hate yoga. My wife tells me that she's a Pilates instructor. She's like, she can, and she's like, you need to do yoga. It's good for you because you're
Well, I did.
flexible.
I endorsed that, but he wasn't doing. He was doing Nani yoga and Bhakti yoga.
Okay.
It wasn't the physical stuff.
Oh, okay.
Pranayama and mantra.
Okay. See, there you go.
But not that I'm knocking the. We all need to do the physical stuff, so that's good too. Yeah.
How long have you been living in Italy for?
Oh, about 14 years now. Yeah, really.
Where do you live?
Off of the Amalfi Coast, like that.
Oh, okay.
Capri. It's just over there. Now that it's dark now. But,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it must be absolutely. It's
beautiful. Yeah, yeah. You've got to come over as well if you're on. I know this trip is to Ireland, which is Ireland would be nice.
Kind of convinced her. I was trying to no, we can go more than that. I was like, listen, like my friends are all laughing, especially some of my friends who are Irish. They're like, I was like, yeah, we're going to Ireland. They're laughing because they're just sending me like shots of Angela's ashes and stuff. Like, have fun on your honeymoon.
I went in August and it rained every day for 2 weeks.
Look, I'm like, I love the UK, but I'm like, it's not really the honeymoon destination of the world. Yeah, I've been to Stornoway and it is absolutely gorgeous, especially up in the Outer Hebrides. But it's rugged. You're like,
Yeah.
I live in BC, so it's very rugged. We have the same climate. It's like beautiful, rugged coastline.
What is it? Minus?
No, we didn't. It doesn't snow. We have more of it will snow here, but it snows here like it'll snow in London. Like we're because of the Pacific Ocean, we get a warmer current, and so it rains. Like it rains a lot. It rains. We know.
So it's a busman's holiday.
That's why when people came here, they're like, hey, this looks a lot like London. And they're just like, let's start building. It's
Yeah.
like, it's meaning all the time.
You just crossed America and Canada.
And like all the Scottish people, especially Cape Breton, you go to Cape Breton and you're like, oh my God, this looks like the Highlands. And literally it's probably why they're like, well, let's start building here. Like,
Yeah.
this is us. Anyway, okay, well, I will start. So tell me, general timelines. Like, when would you like?
Well, we booked up for like 6 months in advance with the songs, so there's no time pressure. But if I were you, I'd compose the song today. I've always like, if you're hot to trot now.
Yeah.
If you come back in a week, you won't, to get yourself excited, you're never going to do it. So just have a demo today, and then production can take years. I mean, so we have a band we have a session band here in Italy. We'd love to work with you, do a drum mix, something like that. If you're mixing, mastering, whatever you need to do.
I'm still figuring out what it'll be like. I know based on this, I definitely want Steph to play fiddle, and I'm not sure what the song will need.
Okay.
If it does need drums, or if it'll be like, it really depends. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be an acoustic track. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna but I'm gonna take you up on that it's time to do it today. I'm also gonna try to figure out what the name of that monk was.
Yeah.
Because that was really interesting. Was doing a painting of this guy who was rescued by a dog.
Well, I'll send you a transcript of the interview, and you can, because it's always nice when people hear the lyrics and they recognize all these points that you mentioned, and because he's just copy him. He's such an articulate. It makes you want to study etymology now when you know the roots of all these words. It history makes sense.
Yeah, and then you also are like, man, I need to be better. Like, I gotta go read some more Keats. I gotta go read James. I somehow I'm gonna have to get through Ulysses again. I don't know how that's gonna happen.
I wish I was that smart, to be able to pull on history like that without.
Yeah. We all have our thing. Some like, you can go to an opera and people like, I'll be with people who love opera, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening, and they're just like profoundly shaken by it. And same thing for me with certain types of music. So
yeah. Well, I mean, you're doing your greatest. You're rowing your own boat. I bet he can't string two chords together. So
yeah, Richard. So I may not know Yeats or whatever, but you know what?
Yeah,
I do know.
I know my scales.
Donovan.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this was so much fun to do. I appreciate you. Thank you for asking me. I had so much fun preparing for this, like just in terms of listening to him talk about things and reading more of his book. And so thank you.
No, well, this time next year, pick another guest, and
Oh, I would love to.
Got an eye out for someone else who.
Fantastic. I would love to do that.
Oh,
okay.
Brilliant. Okay, mate.
Right,
Take care. Good luck with the song.
Talk to you in a bit.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Heavy is here on the mountain where I am slipping away. Heavy it is here in the valley, running free on a spring day in May. Oh, sweet Margie lay beside me, and I'll whisper in your ear, go tell Saint Rock no more I'll walk. And could I lie with the dogs of God? I think of the times that you stood by. I think I'm still calling your name. I remember the feeling of freedom as we stood in the fields of Spain. Alabama, Oscar King. saw your eyes with the dogs of God. So I'll come down to you in the morning as the sun kisses your golden hair. I'll come down to you in the evening, in the breeze of the cool mountain air. Oh, sweet lady, if by evening I'm not waiting by your gate, then bury me by the old tree, and may I run with the dogs of God. May I run with the dogs of God. May I run with the dogs of God. May I